Everything starts with a thought, and everything ends with one. Your peace, your power, your purpose, all of it lives or dies in your mind. Most people don't lose because they're weak, they lose because they think wrong. This audiobook isn't motivation. It's mental training. You're going to learn how to think like a warrior, focus like a laser, and cut through noise like a blade. Control your thoughts, and your life will obey. Let's begin. Chapter 1. Stop letting random thoughts run your life. Most people don't realize this, but their mind is not theirs anymore. Their mind is on autopilot. Their mind is being hijacked by distractions, by doubts, by noise. You wake up, check your phone, and before you've even taken your first conscious breath, 10 other people are already thinking for you. You didn't choose your first thought, it was chosen for you. And that's the problem. You've given up the steering wheel of your own mind. You've allowed random thoughts, emotions, and impulses to drive your day, your actions, your energy, your life. You scroll, you react, you compare, you overthink, and you wonder why you feel lost. It's because your mind is not under your control. It's running on random. Here's the truth. If you don't control your thoughts will control you. Every emotion you feel, every choice you make, begins with a thought. A thought is not harmless. A thought is a seed. And seeds grow. You think weakness, you act weak. You think fear, you move with hesitation. You think doubt, you stop before you start. That's the invisible chain around most people's necks, their own thinking. The prison isn't physical. It's mental. And that's why this chapter matters. Because until you take control of what happens in your head, you'll never control what happens in your life. Let's be clear. Your mind is not a public park. It's not a place for every passing idea, every opinion, every piece of drama to wander in and take up space. You must protect it like private property. You decide who enters. You decide what stays. You decide what gets thrown out. That's called mental discipline. That's called ownership of thought. And it begins with awareness. Start noticing your thoughts. Catch them in the act. When you feel anxious, pause. Ask yourself, what thought created this emotion? Because behind every feeling, there's a sentence running through your mind. It might be subtle. It might be automatic. But it's there. And that sentence, that thought, is the command you've been obeying without even knowing it. You feel fear because you thought of danger. You feel anger because you thought of disrespect. You feel powerless because you thought you had no control. It's not about what happened, it's about what you think about what happened. That's the difference between reaction and control. Here's your new rule. Before you let a thought settle in your mind, inspect it. Challenge it. Ask, does this thought serve me or sabotage me? If it fuels focus, keep it. If it breeds fear, delete it. If it brings clarity, double down on it. If it creates confusion, question it until it disappears. You have a choice. Boys, your thoughts are not laws. They are suggestions. You don't have to accept everyone. That's the key. That's the shift that turns an ordinary mind into a powerful one. Look at the most focused people you know. They're not smarter. They're not luckier. They're just ruthless with their thoughts. They decide what deserves attention and what doesn't. They don't waste mental energy on gossip, jealousy, or imaginary scenarios. Because they know attention is energy. And energy is life. If you waste your attention on random thoughts, you waste your life on random results. Simple. So, what's the fix? It's mental filtration. You must filter what you allow to enter your mental space. Guard your inputs. Guard your environment. Guard your words. Because every input becomes a thought. Every thought becomes an emotion. Every emotion becomes an action. And every action becomes your life. This is why it's not about luck. It's about discipline. Mental discipline. Here's a simple exercise, one you can start today. Take 1 hour of silence. No phone. No notifications. No distractions. And simply watch your thoughts. Don't judge them. Just notice how random they are. You'll see how much noise your mind produces when left unsupervised. That's not clarity, that's chaos. And it's running your life. But the moment you observe it, you take back control. Awareness breaks the pattern. Awareness reclaims power. The next step is redirection. Once you catch a negative thought, replace it. Don't just delete, redirect. If you think, I can't do this, replace it with, I'm learning how to handle this. If you think, this always goes wrong, replace it with, I'm adjusting until it goes right. If you think, I'm not good enough, replace it with, I'm not done yet. Repetition rewires. That's the power of training your thoughts. And understand this. You are not your thoughts. You are the observer of your thoughts. You are the one who decides what gets power. So stop identifying with every mental noise that passes through your mind. Not every thought deserves your belief. Not every idea deserves your attention. You are not obligated to believe everything you think. You have a choice. You always have a choice. Some people live in mental slavery. They believe their thoughts are truth. They believe their mind is always right. But truth is, your mind repeats what it's been fed. If you feed it fear, it will echo fear. If you feed it discipline, it will echo focus. If you feed it purpose, it will echo direction. So, ask yourself, what are you feeding your mind? Because that's what's controlling your life. You want peace? Feed it clarity. You want strength? Feed it consistency. You want growth? Feed it truth. This is how you rebuild your mental operating system. Every time you catch yourself drifting into random thought, pull yourself back. Say it out loud if you have to. No, that's not my thought. I'm in control. Say it until it sticks. Say it until your mind obeys. Because repetition is how you train your subconscious. That's the same way negative patterns were created, repetition. So, you're not broken. You're just untrained. And now, you're training. This chapter is not about perfection. It's about control. It's about awareness. It's about reclaiming the steering wheel of your life. Because if you don't direct your mind, someone else will. If you don't command your focus, the world will command it for you. If you don't decide your thoughts, the algorithm will. You have a choice, right now, to stop letting random thoughts run your life. To start thinking on purpose. To start creating on purpose. To start living on purpose. That's the power of awareness. That's the foundation of mental mastery. You just learned the first step, control what enters your mind. Next, we'll go deeper, into the difference between motivation and true mental discipline. Because you don't need inspiration, you need training. You don't need hype, you need structure. You've taken control of your thoughts. Now let's train them. Chapter 2. You don't need motivation, you need discipline of thought. Everyone wants motivation. Everyone wants to feel ready. But motivation is a lie. It's temporary. It's emotional. It fades. You don't need motivation. You need discipline of thought. Because motivation is a feeling. And feelings are fragile. Discipline is a decision. And decisions build power. That's the key. Motivation says, I'll do it when I feel like it. Discipline says, I'll do it because it's time. Motivation depends on mood. Discipline depends on mindset. When you live by motivation, you're a slave to emotion. When you live by discipline, you become the master of your mind. And that's the difference between people who dream and people who execute. You have to understand this. Your thoughts create the rhythm of your life. If your thoughts are weak, your habits will be weaker. If your thoughts are disciplined, your habits will follow. It always starts in your head. Not your schedule. Not your to-do list. Your head. Because if your thinking isn't disciplined, everything else will fall apart. You'll start something, then stop. You'll feel inspired, then disappear. You'll talk about your goals, but never build them. That's the cost of relying on motivation. Let me make it plain. Motivation is the spark. Discipline is the engine. If you depend on sparks, you'll never finish the race. You'll keep restarting your fire every time it dies. But if you build the engine, if you train your thoughts to move no matter how you feel, then you'll never stop again. That's what separates winners from wishers. That's the mental difference. Motivation wants comfort. Discipline wants results. Motivation says, I'll wait until it's easier. Discipline says, I'll start while it's hard. Motivation says, I need to feel inspired. Discipline says, I'll create my own reason. You have a choice. You can keep chasing motivation, or you can build discipline. Because one is a chase, the other is a command. One fades, the other lasts. One is emotional, the other is eternal. So how do you build discipline of thought? You start by catching yourself in the moment you hesitate. That hesitation, that pause between thought and action, that's the battlefield. That's where weakness tries to take over. Your mind will whisper, do it later. Rest a bit more. Maybe tomorrow. That's not your voice. That's your comfort zone talking. And it's lying to you. You have to interrupt that pattern. You have to speak truth to your own mind. Say, I decide now. Say, later is not real. Say, I move. I act. I execute. That's how discipline of thought is built. Not through emotion, but through command. Real discipline begins with one sentence. I don't negotiate with my mind. Say it again. I don't negotiate with my mind. That's the mantra of warriors, creators, leaders, people who don't wait for the right mood to move. They move and the mood follows. That's the secret. Action creates motivation, not the other way around. You act first. The feeling comes later. When you say, I'll work when I feel motivated, you hand your power to your mood. But when you say, I'll work whether I feel like it or not, you take your power back. That's how you control your life, by controlling your mental commands. It's not about energy. It's about consistency. It's not about inspiration. It's about repetition. Every time you act without waiting to feel ready, you build a new mental pathway. You're teaching your brain, we move on command. You're training your mind to obey. That's how winners think. Every strong person you admire, they don't wake up motivated every day. They wake up trained. They don't need hype. They need direction. They don't depend on emotion. They depend on commitment. And that comes from daily mental repetition, not waiting for the spark, but being the spark. Here's what you need to understand. Motivation is borrowed energy. Discipline is self-generated power. Motivation is reaction. Discipline is creation. Stop borrowing energy from YouTube clips, quotes, or other people's passion. Start generating your own from thought discipline. That means, you decide your focus before the day starts. You execute even when nobody claps. You push through the noise and finish your task because your mind is trained, not tempted. That's how you take control of your life, by taking command of your thoughts. Let's talk real life. You want to wake up early? Stop telling yourself it's hard. Tell yourself it's necessary. You want to work out? Stop waiting for energy. Move your body, your energy will follow. You want to build a business? Stop chasing motivation. Build habits. Show up even when it's boring. The world respects consistency, not mood swings. You don't need more motivation. You need more repetition. Repetition builds certainty. Certainty builds momentum. Momentum builds mastery. That's the formula. That's how you think like a leader. Most people never get this far because they think motivation is the answer. It's not. It's the distraction. They spend their lives chasing the high, a new quote, a new video, a new burst of energy, but they never train their mind to perform without it. And that's why they stay stuck. But you're learning the truth. You're learning how to lead yourself. You're learning how to command your thoughts instead of serving them. Because discipline of thought is not about punishment. It's about freedom. When you discipline your thoughts, you free yourself from emotional chaos. You free yourself from hesitation. You free yourself from the addiction to feeling ready. That's real power, moving with clarity even when your emotions try to hold you back. Repeat this until it's tattooed in your brain. I don't need motivation. I need command. I don't need hype. I need direction. I don't need a push. I am the push. That's how mental strength sounds. That's how mental mastery begins. Every time you think, I'll wait until I feel ready, stop. Replace it with, I decide now. Say it with conviction. Say it with force. Say it until your mind learns to obey. Because the moment your thoughts obey you, your life will follow. This chapter is not about being emotionless. It's about being unshaken. It's not about pretending to love the grind. It's about doing what must be done, especially when you don't love it. That's how you separate yourself from the crowd. That's how you build the mental steel no distraction can break. You have a choice. Live by feelings or live by focus. Be fueled by hype or be driven by discipline. You already know the right answer. You've learned the difference between emotion and execution. You've learned that motivation fades, but mental training lasts. You've learned to command your thoughts like a soldier commands his movement. And now, you're ready for the next step. Because once your mind is disciplined, your emotions must follow. You've mastered mental discipline. Now it's time to master emotional control. Chapter 3. Emotional control begins in the mind. You can't control the world. You can't control people. You can't control what happens to you. But you can always control what happens inside you. That's emotional control. And it doesn't start with breathing techniques. It doesn't start with meditation or journaling. It starts with how you think. Because emotion is not random. Emotion is a reaction to thought. Change your thinking, and you change your feelings. That's the key. People think emotions just happen. They don't. They're created. They're built by the sentences you say to yourself all day long. I can't handle this. This always happens to me. They don't respect me. They're making me angry. They're not making you anything. You're thinking yourself into anger. You're thinking yourself into chaos. That's why the strongest people in the world don't just train their bodies. They train their reactions. They discipline their thoughts before their emotions take over. Because when you control your thoughts, your emotions have no choice but to follow. Let's make this clear. You don't fix emotions by fighting them. You fix emotions by understanding them. Every emotion has a thought underneath it. Find the thought, and you'll find the cause. You feel anger? The thought is, I've been disrespected. You feel fear? The thought is, something bad might happen. You feel anxiety? The thought is, I might fail. Now, here's the truth. Those thoughts are not facts. They're guesses. They're interpretations. They're your mind's quick reaction, not reality. That's why the first step to emotional control is this. Don't believe everything you think. You have a choice. Boys. When your emotions rise, your thinking drops. That's why you say things you regret. That's why you make decisions you later question. Because when emotion takes the wheel, logic goes blind. And your life becomes reaction, not direction. So stop letting your emotions drive your day. You're supposed to be the driver. You're supposed to hold the steering wheel. And that steering wheel is thought. Pause the next time you feel your emotions spike. Anger, jealousy, fear, doubt, whatever it is. Before you react, stop. Don't text back. Don't shout. Don't spiral. Ask one question. What am I thinking right now that's creating this emotion? That question alone separates powerful minds from emotional prisoners. Because awareness breaks control. When you see the thought, you gain power over it. You stop being its victim. You start being its master. Here's the truth. Most people are not emotional, they're undisciplined. They let every wave of feeling dictate their behavior. They let every mood change rewrite their day. And they call it being real. That's not real. That's reckless. Emotional control is not pretending to be calm. It's training yourself to think before you respond. It's saying, I feel angry, but I choose clarity. I feel scared, but I choose courage. I feel tired, but I choose focus. That's emotional discipline. That's strength in action. Let's get practical. When you feel emotion rising, here's what you do. Name it. Don't fight the feeling, identify it. I'm feeling frustration. I'm feeling fear. When you name an emotion, you separate yourself from it. You're saying, this is a feeling, not my identity. Find the thought behind it. What story created this emotion? Maybe you're assuming something that isn't true. Maybe you're replaying a past failure. Find the root. Replace it with direction. Instead of letting emotion dictate behavior, give it an instruction. I feel anxious, that means I need structure. I feel angry, that means I need clarity. That's how you turn emotion into energy. That's how you turn reaction into control. Understand this. Emotional control doesn't mean you never feel. It means you never fold. You still experience frustration, sadness, fear, but they don't control your decisions. You control how long they stay. Emotion visits. Discipline decides if it gets to move in. That's the power you have. That's what most people never learn. You don't need to suppress your emotions. You need to train them, like a soldier trains his reflexes. Because emotion is powerful energy, but only if it's directed. Anger without discipline destroys. Anger with purpose builds. Fear without control paralyzes. Fear with focus protects. Sadness without awareness breaks you. Sadness with understanding grows you. It's not about feeling less. It's about thinking clearer. That's the skill. That's the edge. Let's talk about reaction versus response. Reaction is emotional reflex. Response is mental choice. When something happens, the untrained mind reacts. The disciplined mind responds. Reaction says, "You made me angry." Response says, "I choose calm." Reaction says, "I can't handle this." Response says, "Let's figure this out." Reaction burns energy. Response builds power. That's how you live in control. Not by controlling the world, but by mastering your inner world. You have to stop giving your emotions authority over your actions. You have to stop saying, "That's just how I am." That's how you were before you learned control. You are not your emotions. You are the commander of them. You decide what gets power. You decide what gets silence. You decide what gets your energy. That's leadership, internal leadership. And if you can't lead your emotions, you'll never lead your life. Here's what you need to start doing today. When emotion strikes, slow down your thoughts. Breathe, but don't just breathe, think. Choose the next thought intentionally. Say to yourself, "I'm not reacting. I'm responding." Say it every time until it becomes automatic. Because repetition builds wiring. And wiring builds control. You don't get emotional control once. You train it daily. You train it in traffic. You train it in conflict. You train it in silence. Every time you choose calm over chaos, you're building strength. Every time you choose patience over panic, you're building control. Every time you choose thought over reaction, you're building freedom. That's the discipline that changes lives. It's not about being emotionless. It's about being unstoppable. It's about being centered when others are scattered. It's about holding your peace when others lose theirs. Because control is power, and power begins in the mind. You have a choice, to let emotion dictate your life, or to let awareness direct it. Choose awareness. Choose discipline. Choose control. That's how you build emotional stability. That's how you think straight. You've learned that emotion is born from thought, and that thought is your responsibility. You've learned that power isn't about reacting stronger, it's about responding smarter. You've learned that calm is not weakness, it's control. And now, it's time to take that control one step deeper. Because once your emotions are stable, you can finally move with clarity. And clarity requires one thing, speed. You mastered emotional control. Now, let's talk about decision power. The power to think less, decide faster, and move without hesitation. Chapter 4, Think Less. Decide faster. No. You think too much. That's your problem. You analyze every step until your courage evaporates. You replay every scenario until your confidence dies. And by the time you finally decide, the opportunity is gone. You don't lack intelligence. You lack decisiveness. You don't need more time to think. You need to move. Overthinking is mental hesitation. And hesitation kills momentum. Every time you pause to question yourself, you teach your brain one thing. Doubt. And doubt, when repeated, becomes identity. You start to become the person who hesitates, who waits, who second-guesses. And eventually, you stop acting altogether. That's the cost of thinking too much. You drown in your own analysis. You confuse activity for progress. You confuse worry for wisdom. But here's the truth. You don't need to know every step. You only need to take the next one. You have a choice. That's the key. The illusion of more thinking. You tell yourself that thinking more will make you safer. That you'll make fewer mistakes if you just gather more information, do more research, wait for more signs. But that's not protection. That's procrastination wearing the mask of wisdom. No one ever thought their way into clarity, they acted their way into clarity. You don't learn by predicting. You learn by doing. You don't gain certainty before you move, you earn certainty by moving. The world doesn't reward the smartest thinker. It rewards the boldest decision maker. Because the truth is, speed is power. Action is leverage. Momentum is clarity. If you wait until you feel ready, you will never move. You have to move before you feel ready. That's the discipline of execution. Stop telling yourself, I just need to think it through. No, you need to act it through. You'll think better after you move. Overthinking feeds fear. Let's be real, overthinking is just fear disguised as logic. You call it planning, but it's avoidance. You call it preparation, but it's protection from discomfort. You're not afraid of the wrong decision, you're afraid of regret. But regret doesn't come from acting. It comes from not acting. You're afraid of failing. But failure isn't what destroys people, inaction is. You can recover from a bad decision. You can't recover from never deciding. Every time you think instead of act, your brain learns that hesitation equals safety. You reinforce a habit that keeps you stuck. That's why your mind feels noisy. That's why you can't focus. You've conditioned yourself to think instead of move. The only way out is reversal. Train your brain to act first. To move when it's uncomfortable. To decide when you feel uncertain. That's mental strength. That's self-control in motion. Decisions create energy. Here's what most people never understand. Action is energy. When you move, you generate power. Indecision drains you because it splits your focus. Your brain can't commit. You're trying to hold every possible outcome in your head, and that burns your energy like fire. But once you decide, your energy returns. Your attention sharpens. You start to feel alive again. Every great performer, athletes, entrepreneurs, creators, moves fast. They make a call, they commit, they adjust on the way. That's why they keep momentum. That's why they stay ahead. You must do the same. Decide faster. Trust your preparation. Correct as you go. You don't need perfection, you need progress. You don't need endless analysis, you need a start. The discipline of instant action. So, how do you train yourself to stop overthinking? Simple, practice immediate action. Here's how it works. When your mind starts to debate, interrupt it. Say to yourself, move first. Think later. Then count down from 3, 2, 1, and take the step. Hit send. Make the call. Start the workout. Speak up. You don't need to feel like it. You don't need permission. You don't need perfect timing. You just need discipline. That's how you rewire your brain for speed. That's how you escape hesitation. Remember this. Action cures fear. Motion kills doubt. The longer you wait, the stronger your fear becomes. But the moment you move, your fear loses power. You have a choice. That's the key. Stop needing certainty. Most people won't move until they know the outcome. They want guarantees. They want security. But control is an illusion. You'll never have perfect knowledge. You'll never eliminate all risk. You'll never know if it will work until you do it. That's what separates the average from the unstoppable. The average waits for certainty. The unstoppable moves with uncertainty. You can plan forever, but eventually, you must act. And when you act, you gain feedback. That feedback becomes wisdom. Wisdom becomes intuition. And intuition is what makes your future decisions faster and stronger. So stop trying to think your way to mastery. You earn mastery through movement. The mind follows movement. When you act decisively, something changes in your psychology. Your mind starts to trust you again. It sees that you keep your word, that you follow through. Confidence isn't a feeling, it's a reputation you build with yourself. Every fast decision builds that reputation. Every delayed one destroys it. You have to prove to your brain that you mean what you say. That when you decide, it's final. That when you commit, it's done. That's what makes you powerful. Not your intelligence. Not your ideas. Your execution. Because ideas don't change your life, actions do. That's the discipline of thought. Thinking less, deciding faster, moving now. Closing the loop. So stop analyzing. Stop waiting. Stop letting hesitation run your mind. You don't need to figure everything out. You just need to move. Every time you act, you get stronger. Every time you decide, your focus sharpens. Every time you move, you build momentum. That's the formula. Think less. Decide faster. Move now. Because your thoughts aren't meant to paralyze you, they're meant to guide you. Your decisions aren't meant to be perfect, they're meant to be made. And your life isn't waiting for more clarity, it's waiting for more action. You mastered the power of action. Now, let's talk about the art of control. The ability to stay centered even when the world spins around you.